is a valiant effort.
I thought you were doing it that time.
No. We're off to a phenomenal start, I think.
We're just out here breaking paradigms and phone stands.
You said it, not me. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Men and Community Podcast. On today's episode, Matt and Carlo introduce themselves. We talk a little about why we feel this podcast is so important in today's world, what we hope to accomplish, and why we're so excited for you to be on this journey with us. We can't wait to get started, so let's go. All right, so welcome to the first episode of the M.A.C podcast. So M.A.C stands for a couple things, and the name, I guess maybe we'll get into how we came up with it, but the M.A.C podcast primarily stands for Men and Community, and then it also stands for Matt and Carlo.
But like Matt and Carlo first, really, because, you know, if our names were Thomas and Leopold, then we'd have to come up with a completely new name.
It would be. So we are being a little narcissistic, I guess, by having our names in the podcast.
Or by having a podcast at all.
It takes a certain level of narcissism to have a podcast. You have to seem to really like the idea of hearing your own voice. But I think beyond that, it has to be a little bit selfless as well. Especially a podcast like what we're trying to create here, because we Men in Community, the community I think is just as crucial as the men part, because there's so many challenges as men that I think we face that are maybe silent, but we hold a big burden at the same time because community we feel like falls on our shoulders, which isn't always the case, but it feels like it does. So we're going to get into a little bit about why we want this podcast to be a thing, why we wanted to go through the lengths of trying this out, and what I guess we hope for it to be. But why don't you start? Do we want to dive into our cards here?
Sure, yeah. This is being the first episode and all. One of the things that we wanted to try to do, you know, something that everyone's going to learn about us very, very quickly is that we have pretty serious, deep-rooted chats about things that we feel, that we experience, that we see in the world around us. And then we have absolutely ridiculous, nonsensical things that about the world around us as well. So we thought we'd kick it off with a little bit of a way to break the ice, just to make things feel a little bit more comfortable for us, so that hopefully ideas come out more organically. So we have these tabletop cards in front of us that you may be able to see if you're watching on video, but those of you listening on podcast, you probably won't. So I'm going to draw a first card. I'm just going to read the topic here, and I'm going to talk about it. This is really awkward because this is going to bring the competitive nature in both of us out right away. And just for context, for those of you listening, it's just Carlo and I here. How many people in this room could beat you at an arm wrestle? I'm going to come in hot and say not a single one. Not a single one could beat me in an arm wrestle.
But not even a question of it.
No question.
Okay. So let's give a little bit of a preface, I guess, to say that fitness is important in both of our lives.
Yes. Both former athletes in very different sports. And the reason why this is a bit of a hot take is Carlo's sport was wrestling and mine was not.
Yeah, but you also played at a higher level than I did. Like, I kind of finished in high school and you played through university. You played football, right? I did football, wrestling, and rugby. So lots of the physical stuff. But also, I find that you're so quick to the draw on that kind of funny because I have been into bodybuilding and powerlifting 5 days a week for the last 3 years. And not to say that I don't believe you as a strong man, but our training is very different.
Very different. No argument here.
So, I'm going to let you have your opinion, but I don't think it's correct.
And stay tuned for the podcast where you get to just listen to us groan and groan.
Do an arm wrestle. It'll be like the episode 10 or something where everybody's like, okay, let's settle this now.
Yeah, that bonus episode.
That being said, like also I'm also smart enough to take a look at body mechanics, and you're a larger man than I am, like in stature.
Also longer arms.
Yeah, longer arms. I don't feel. Have you done many arm wrestles?
Not recently, but back in my day.
Oh, back in my day. Okay.
So, anyways, so that's one. All right, your turn.
Oh, do I get to pull a card now too?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, okay. So one of the fun things I think about Matt and I's relationship, as he said, is that we also get to explore kind of the goofier side of us. But the goofiness, of course, being two men in our early 30s, right? You're over 30.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, I'm turning 32 here in a couple weeks.
That's true. We're in that little frame of time where you and I are the same age.
That's right. Very, very tiny little frame of time. So we still get to have lots of what I would frame as adult conversations. And they're always constructive. They're never overly alcoholed. So the question is, what's a taboo you haven't tried but are curious about?
Interesting.
And I suppose we should probably keep this somewhat PG-13. Somewhat.
I like how you picked PG-13 very constructively. All right.
Well.
Oh, am I going first?
I don't know. I was hoping that you would.
All right, I'll go first. One thing that I've always been intrigued about but never actually done, which will probably come as a surprise to a lot of people, is skinny dip.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Skinny dipping is definitely a thing that I feel falls under the category of PG-13 taboo. That I feel that I'm at a place in my life where I'm ready to try skinny dipping.
Sure. Okay. And why is it that you feel you're at a place now as opposed to 5 years ago?
I think that at least for me in my 20s, there is like, as much as I've always been a confident person, there's been this level of self-consciousness where self-conscious?
Sure.
Yeah, self-consciousness where it comes to my body and I'm at a place now where this is the combination of caring less what other people think, but also in a place with my training where I'm feeling pretty good about how I look. So it seems like this is the sweet spot where if I'm gonna skinny dip, we're in. It's going to be now.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'll be the little devil on your shoulder when the time comes, I suppose.
I count on you for that.
And then I will walk away to let you have your moment in the water.
Great. So what am I encouraging you to do?
Okay. I don't know how to answer this question. I'm the kind of guy that just really enjoys the love of an experience. And that doesn't necessarily come with a whole bunch of premeditation to it, right? So there might come a time or an opportunity to do something that I guess would be viewed as taboo, and that would be exciting about it, but it wouldn't be taboo because it was something that I'd thought about doing prior.
Right, you're into it because it's spontaneous.
Because it's spontaneous, because there's a couple other people maybe in the group that are like, oh, I don't know if we should do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's even me, and then I talk myself into it. So yeah, there's nothing in particular that I would say that I want to try that I haven't, because it's more of like I just want to be in those situations to let my moral compass kind of steer me in a fun direction, I guess. So yeah, that's a difficult question for me to answer in a specific way.
It's just really remagnetizing that compass,
No, totally, totally. I'm no saint by anybody's imagination, but yeah, just very much. It's all about the experiences for me for a lot of things, which I guess would be a good segue into getting back one of the reasons why we're wanting to do this podcast.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me taking us back on that track.
Yeah.
Is because you and I both love the joy of an experience. We are a little narcissistic. That's part of the experience, to kind of put it out into the world and be able to get like people's opinions back about it. Because you and I both have strong positive reinforcement in our lives to, encourage us to continue to do things like public speaking, professional growth, all those kinds of things. And anytime, I don't know about you, but my experience is anytime I get the opportunity to talk about something I'm passionate about in this kind of space, my feedback from people has always been, you're an amazing speaker. The idea is wonderful. Thank you for, talking about something like that. So for me, doing something like this is in line not only with what I believe to be of service for others, but also a service for myself, because working within my passion and my wants, I guess, in life lights me up.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that something that both of us have in common is we have this really deep desire to go out and make the world a better place. Like impact, the idea of creating impact in the world is significant, super, super significant to both of us. But by the same token, we haven't quite figured out the ways in which we want to impact the world yet. And so, we were sitting around a couple months ago and having a good conversation, and Carlo turns to me and goes, "Why haven't we thought about doing a podcast?" I'm like, "Great. What are we going to do a podcast about?" So basically, we're hoping that this journey is going to, be an opportunity for us to shed some light on some of the things that we're thinking. Hopefully, this podcast can create some positive impacts, some positive ripples in the world of people around us, and hopefully people that we haven't met yet. And hopefully, it's going to provide some clarity on the opportunities that we have to create more impact in the world.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing for me is that since I started this journey of getting my ideas out there, whether it be an in-person speaking engagement or whether it be something on social media, it's been this kind of journey of experiencing it for the first time. And it was super intriguing. I don't know if I told you this, but my little sister got married in August of this year. And I was asked by her to be the MC of the wedding, which at the time I giggled because I was like, "What are you doing making me the MC of your wedding, you silly young lady?"
Idiot.
Yeah. But I was nice. But at the end of the night, or pretty close to the end of the night, I had a childhood neighbor come up to me. So like this was a lady that was like my parents' age as I was growing up. And she came up to me and she goes, "I can't believe how different you are. She goes, when I remember you being a kid, you it was fly under the radar. It was don't talk about things, keep to yourself. You were very polite, very quiet." I think a big part of that was that I was bullied a lot as a kid. So, it was really flying under the radar for me. And she goes, "But look at you now. Like, I'm blown away by not only how you articulate things, but the things that you say, just being so profound and all that kind of stuff." So it was a really cool moment for me to kind of reinforce this idea that have a little bit more to offer than, I guess, the average person just trying to give good advice.
Sure.
So yeah, this whole podcast is very much about that journey, is that you and I have both been through certain things in our lives and been, I guess, blessed or gifted with this ability to articulate our thoughts in a great way that people enjoy. And just like you said, the hope is that as we talk about these things, that somebody's going to come across a concept or a way that we've talked about it, and they're going to view their lives a little bit differently. Yeah. Like, I don't think there's going to be any amazing new concept that you wouldn't have heard somewhere else. But my hope is that it's in a more down-to-earth way, that people can associate a little bit with more and maybe apply a little bit more to their lives. Yeah, that's my big hope.
I love that.
Yeah. So, as we kind of call it the Men in Community podcast, obviously, men, because that's the viewpoint that we come from, right? And what that means in today's society, because it's a little bit skewed, I think, what being a man means. And I don't think that's anybody's particular fault, other than the fact that everybody has to go on their own journey of what being an adult and being a man means.
And I think that's really important too, because this podcast is about men and community, by no means are we professing to understand the male experience,
no.
right? We're really just, as you said, coming at this from our unique perspectives as men, and we're not doing it to diminish the experiences of other men, women, or any other gender identification group. This is just the perspective that we want to share, coming from that place of happening to be men with certain experiences.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. And I think the longer term goal of this podcast is to bring a lot of other people into the fold, whether they be as guests or, for a few short episodes or whatever it may be, to get the impressions and the ideas from those other viewpoints into ours.
Yeah.
Right? Like you said, it's not like we believe ourselves to be experts or anything like that, but that is our viewpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are trying to experience life through somebody else's viewpoint, you are doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
Right? You have to experience life genuinely as you are. So that's how we're going to talk, right? And our intention by no means is to rub feathers or make anybody upset or anything like that. So we would ask that everybody just understands that we are coming from our viewpoint, and that's really the only thing that we can offer is our own viewpoint.
Absolutely.
Right? So, men, and then of course community, because I think that's a little too faceted as well, is that community affects us. And if you're the kind of people like we are, is that we also want to affect our communities.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think that's, for me, community is a fascinating word. In every job or career or vocation I've ever had, community has been at the forefront. And so to me, community has so many different definitions and so many different nuances, and it creates this wildly intersecting Venn diagram of the communities that we participate in and then therefore have an impact on us. And so, the idea of this being about community is what really, really excites me. Is your community your block? Is your community the city or the municipality or the town from which you call home, right? Is your community your nuclear family unit, right?
Yeah.
And all of these different ways that we define community have an impact on our personal experiences.
Absolutely. And I think what's so cool is that because that definition of community is so fluid at times, you can have like different goals about how you want to let that be part of your life. Right. So I think a good example would be like sometimes, actually, I think a really great example is that there's kind of a saying that I have within my office where we talk about, as you grow up and you become an adult, your goal is to change the world. Right. Well, a few years goes by and it's less the world and it's more the continent. And then a couple more years goes by and life starts to hit you and you've got responsibilities, and now it becomes the country, the province, the city, the community. And then eventually it's conquering the barbecue on a Saturday afternoon. The dream, right? So I'm not content with that.
Yeah.
I'm not content with conquering the barbecue. Do I make a mean steak? Absolutely. But I want to affect my community, whether that means one person or it means 1 million people. Yeah. And I want to do it in a positive way, because I think so many people out there, especially with social media, want to affect the world, not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way that is more beneficial to them than anybody else, right? You look at things like predatory advertisement. You look at things like these courses that you'll see that people will sell, and not putting down anything like that, but like just things that when you dive into the deeper of it, it's not about growth. It's not about becoming a better person. It's about how can I sell another thing today?
Yeah. Right.
And the world is in this really interesting point, because we're recording this in 2022, where inflation is at like 7%, 7.1% in Canada right now. The housing markets are crazy. The cost of living, the cost of heat, the cost of gas, everything is crazy inflated. People are making no more money now than they did before COVID. And we're on this kind of looming, if not already, point of recession. And because the world was so connected over the last 2 years of COVID and watching social media and the rise of TikTok and all those kinds of things, I think we're all more aware of this. And unless you're really good at blocking it out, it's scary.
Yeah.
So, and I guess another big part of it, now that this thought is coming to my mind, is how can we maybe calm the waters a little bit for people?
Yeah. So you want to put people to sleep with a podcast? So that's what you're saying.
I hope my voice is calming, but not that calming.
Get you hired on the Calm app.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, like just bringing a little bit of a frame of reference to people that you can't control the things you can't control.
Sure.
But you better work your butt off to control the things you can.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just fly through life, I guess.
Yeah. And to take that even further too, I think when I hear you talking about this idea that we have when we come into the world as adults and want to try to make a difference in the world, you know, and that idea that you shared that our field of vision just comes down and down as we become more, I don't know, pessimistic or realistic about what our capacity is to be able to do that while supporting the people that we love. I think too, what we've really learned since the start of 2020 with the pandemic and political divisiveness and all these other things, you know, you touched on the economic ones, but there's some pretty serious social and political things that have happened too. And what I've really noticed is that when times are good, the people that we believe are a part of our community is very broad. We feel more connected to the people down the streets. We feel more likely to pull over and help somebody if they have a flat tire, things like this. But the minute that we feel threatened, whether that threatened is, you know, political, or it's social, or it's, you know, is that person vaccinated or not, right? As soon as these threats happen, it narrows our field of focus in the same way, and all of a sudden that threatening feeling, that feeling of not feeling safe, shrinks the size of community that we feel comfortable with. And so for
what
me,
a great point.
What I'm really passionate about is trying to re-extend that idea of community again, starting to think more positively about our neighbors. And one of the ideas that I'll talk about in a future episode is about how the front garage of houses, so houses that have a garage in the front yard, is destroying community. And so that's something, I know you're giving me that look, I'm going to save that for a later podcast, but that's something that I feel really strongly about. And so, you know, I think that as we're emerging and hopefully coming into this place where people are starting to feel more safe again, safe physically, mentally, economically, I want to create environments where we can start to then broaden out what our understanding of our community is.
Yeah. I think that's such a great point that I didn't think about that our communities kind of squeeze in on themselves when we feel threatened. And I think that's such a great point. And I guess this is just a thought that's coming to me, and I don't know. I think it's going to depend highly on the success of this podcast. But a lot of what I've been seeing a lot of people doing or finding a lot of value in is really great online communities. And I think that came at a necessity because we couldn't see our actual friends for a couple of years. So, you know, if the response is good enough, I think it would be really cool to maybe open up a Discord community or something like that, where we could have people come in and weigh in and talk about some of these things. Because I know for me, I want the broader reach of things like content that people can consume, but I thrive in one-on-one or one-on-group kind of scenarios, and I know you do too. So, you know, if that's the kind of support somebody's looking for as well, within what we can give, I think both you and I would be excited to do so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, because, you know, if the communities are shrinking and there's an opportunity to help expand them in a positive way, I'm all for that.
Yeah. I love that. So before we go too much further, I mean, I'm imagining that a lot of people that are going to be listening to this already know one of us, if not both of us.
Sure.
And so, quick shout out to all those people that are helping us
Yeah,
get
you
this
guys
off the
rock.
ground and spending more time listening to us than you already are forced to. But I guess for anybody who stumbles upon this and hasn't had a chance to connect with one of us in the past, like, let's do a little bit of introduction and who we are, a little bit of our background. I know that throughout this podcast, we're going to really dive deep into who we are and how we've come to get here, but maybe introducing ourselves as we are today and what that looks like. So, Carlo, being the elder statesman of the two of us, why don't you go first?
Thank you. I think it was really important that you put the key word on like as we are now, because I've gone through some massive transformations over the last few years, and again, that's something we'll get into on a later episode. I'm super excited to share that story. But where I am now is this. I think I would describe it as this pursuit of everything that I can be. Right? Like I don't believe that everybody out there is destined to be a CEO, or destined to be a world impact leader, or destined not to be those things and just be a great parent or something like that. I think everybody has their own fate. And I'm not to say that stuff is set in stone. I think we're the masters of our own destiny. But for me, it's just, I know that there are things that I'm called towards. Yeah. And my day-to-day pursuit has been becoming all that I could be. A great leader that I listen to a lot, he talks about the idea of that at the end of your life, you're going to meet who you could have become. And the most terrifying part of that is, what if you're completely two different people? Right? And I'm not necessarily sure that I'm afraid of that, but I know that I want to be able to look at myself and say, hey, I did everything within my power while still being a good person, while still living the requirements of a day-to-day life. Right? So, I do things like this, speaking. You'll find me on social media. I work in a couple different industries, one being focused very much on helping the average Canadian family do better on a day-to-day basis. I'm very focused on things like fitness and my own personal growth there. And then I have amazing personal relationships, ones that have gotten me through hard times in my life, yours being one of the most key and influential. And it's, again, it comes down to that experience for me, is that, am I doing things that help me grow and help me feel as close as possible to being who I want to be, right? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. So.
Right,
Yeah.
because we can say kind of I'm almost 32 years old and live in Canada and it's cold outside and I drive this kind of, like, we can say all those kind of things, but I don't think that's necessary. You can find me on Facebook or whatever if you want.
It's true. The pictures of the Subi are on there.
Yeah, for a while those were the only pictures. There's a reason for that. We'll get into another episode, I'm sure.
I remember those days.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, what about you?
Yeah,
Great,
so
Matt.
For me, everything that I do is striving to create environments where people feel that they can be positive, be playful, be active, and ultimately feel safe. So I have a number of different hats that I've worn. I've been in the recreation sector professionally for a long, long time. So I've done everything from leading summer camps to coaching rock climbing, a whole number of things. And that brought me where I am now, which is managing a provincial health promotion program that supports communities all across Alberta with initiatives to eat healthy and be active. So there's a really heavy community development aspect there. I also, like you, speak publicly, and the topics that I speak on are all about what it means to be positive and what it means to be playful as adults, and how that can impact things like your workplace culture, how that can impact your susceptibility to burnout, how that can impact just your day-to-day relationships and the way that you experience communication and empathy with other people. So these are things that that I speak on and I'm really, really passionate about, that I learned through the masters that I took in global leadership, or I should say the masters that I took to further the passions and the ideas that I already had.
Sure.
And then the other piece, which I'm really passionate about, is I'm a master trainer with a dance fitness company. And so I've had the opportunity to travel all across North America and either train instructors or teach in schools or interact with kids using this platform that inspires people to enjoy being active, enjoy moving. And through a venue like dance, which is typically so intimidating for a lot of people, either to participate in or to teach. And the program that I'm lucky enough to be a part of gets really at the heart of how can we break down these barriers and the intimidation to do that. And it's something that I'm just so passionate about. And that's led to a bunch of other side gigs here and there, which we'll get into. But really, for me, it comes back to being playful, being positive, and really trying to create the spaces where people can collectively feel safe in being playful and positive.
I love it. I love it because your entire personality to me screams play in like the best of ways.
Did I tell you I was interviewed for a book?
No.
I'll tell you about that in a second. You go ahead.
Okay.
You're about to say nice things about me.
I was about to say really nice things about you. And in typical Matt fashion, you've interrupted to also tell me other great things about you. Not narcissistic at all. Your personality screams play to me. But not in the way that like people look at some people that can't be taken seriously. Sometimes you meet those kind of people. More in like, you want to take every great thing about life and just make it a little bit better. Because you can't take everything so seriously sometimes, right? So that's one of the things I think I appreciate the most about you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, tell me about this book thing.
Okay, so a couple of friends of mine that through the play industry, it feels weird to say that, but through the play industry that I've met, Jed Druryberry and Julie Jones, they are education experts. They've written books on how to be playful in the classroom. So these are teacher resources that teachers can use to make their classrooms a more playful place. And the teachers that they worked with basically said, look, your books are great, but I want to know how to do this for me as an adult who exists in the world. And so Jed and Julie wanted to write a book specific to adults that want to be more playful, and they were kind enough to invite me to do an interview and participate in their book. And so shout out to Jed and Julie. Their book just got printed and published, and you can check it out on Amazon. It's called The Playful Life. I'm really excited to get my hands on a copy. I think it's on its way right now, so really excited to see and hear all of the things. Speaking of the importance of being playful, I'm really excited to see how the book turned out.
That's super cool. I'm surprised I didn't hear about this until now.
So after a brief interlude of technical challenges, we are back, and it's basically just the computer telling us that that's probably long enough for the first episode. Yeah,
I think the goal at the beginning here is not to, ramble on forever, because you and I both know that we can.
Yeah.
So, and it felt like we were coming to a natural conclusion as well, kind of as you said there during the break. So I think we have some interesting ideas for how we want to conclude every episode, because we want you to walk away from an episode feeling fulfilled, not only in what you've heard, but making you think about some ways that you can, practice some gratitude in your own life, some improvements you can make this week, something along those lines. But I think for this week, you brought up the idea of talking about why we are both excited to do this, either in general or with the other person. And we did touch on this a little bit earlier, but why don't you go ahead and kind of tell us what you're thinking?
Yeah, and I guess, for me, and I think part of, and this is something that I've learned from you, something that men are notoriously bad for, again, this is a general stereotype, but nevertheless, is being complimentary to other men.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that I've learned from you, and I've really integrated and tried to make a part of my practice. And so, there's always the sense of, oh, gee, thanks, you're saying something nice about me. But this is something that both of us, me thanks to you, and trying to really integrate, is taking the opportunity to recognize and acknowledge something positive about other men. And so, for me, the reason why I'm excited to go on this podcast adventure with you is you're someone who in my life inspires me and pushes me to be better. You talk about how you want to continue to make an impact in the world, and spending time with you inspires me and pushes me to look for new ways that I can do that too. And so I just feel that you're going to have this tremendous impact on the people that join our podcast and join this journey with us, whether it's 5 people or 5,000. And I'm really, really excited to be a part of your audience as much as I am a participant.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. I think one note that I would want to say to you, just following that comment, is that if you are the kind of person that struggles taking a compliment, it's almost harder to take a compliment than it is to give one sometimes. Yeah. And if you are the kind of person that finds it difficult to do so, practice just saying thank you. Right? Don't, oh shucks, don't play it off like nothing. Yeah. Say thank you. Because if someone is expelling the energy to give you that kind of compliment, it actually takes a lot for them to do so. Yeah. So don't shove it off. Be grateful for that energy, I think. Right? For me, I think the reason I'm really excited to do this podcast with you, beyond what you just said, is that in my life, you are a constant, right? You are a nice baseline for me. There'll be times where I need a little bit of a push, and I don't even have to ask for that from you. Just you telling me how you've succeeded lights a fire under me again. There are times where I need to be brought back into kind of a level of calm and a level of steady, and that is something that you offer me a lot too, because I think you have this great baseline there for that as well. So I'm really excited to have that, and to have that in my life even more than I do now. So thank you for being such a rock in my life, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So at this point, I think we're going to conclude our episode. That was so much fun.
It was fun.
I am super excited to keep doing this. We hope that it makes some great impact in people's lives. We hope that you guys have an absolutely amazing time listening to us, and we're gonna try and get this out there in a way that you guys can interact with us and kind of guide what you want to hear as we kind of move through.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say?
No, I just think that, if anything, however small in this podcast episode was something that resonated with you, write it down. I think that, something we've both taken so much away from being able to put on paper the things that are meaningful that come out of our brains. And so write it down, even if it's one line, one idea. And we're really excited to go on this journey with all of you. So thank you so much. Go do something awesome today.
Yep.
And we'll see you for episode 2.
Thanks, guys. That was so much fun.